Hello, and welcome to We Live for Saturday, your favorite college football podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike, and with me, as always, is your other co-host, John. John, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good.
There it is.
This?
He's
Was
got
that? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. It's I just got to remind a certain fan base about how the rules work and what was right and what was wrong.
So for those of you who are audio only, John is wearing a maroon shirt with gold letters that say, what does it say again? It was an invalid signal. And then there's a picture of Floyd of Rosedale.
That's right. So it's hate week.
It is hate week. It came early this year.
That's right. Who hates Iowa?
We hate Iowa.
That's right. We do.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, that's how it goes here. We are a Big Ten podcast, but we are also Gopher fans, and that's just the way it goes. So
we respect Iowa, but
yes.
For the purposes of my fandom, I hate Iowa.
Absolutely. 100%.
That's just the way it is.
We'll
give them a fair reading on this show, as always.
Yes, we will. Absolutely. So, no, everything's great. No major complaints. Again, enjoyed another win, another shutout, by the way. Two in a row.
2 consecutive shutouts for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exciting times for sure.
Yeah, first time since 1962. So,
which is crazy. That's a crazy stat.
Again, PJ Fleck doing things for Minnesota that haven't been done in decades. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And in this day of offensive football, even against teams that are a little overmatched, it's still a really impressive to get a couple shutouts in a row.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, so things are good, man. No major complaints here. Just want this summer weather in mid-September to go away.
Yeah, I am not all about this 87 degrees in mid-September thing. This is not the vibe that I am looking for. I want it to be crisp and cool.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get a drink at a football game, I want the weather to make my drink stay colder longer. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to being all warm where your ice is all melty right away. And then it doesn't matter what you're drinking at that point. You're just frustrated because your ice has melted and gotten your drink all watery. And nobody likes that.
No, it's a bummer.
You know?
You spend too much money.
I'm not. Yeah. So I am done with having summer games, but looks like we're going to have one more summer game in the Big Ten this week.
Yeah, it looks like it too. I think it's supposed to cool off next week, so I'm looking forward to that for sure. But how about you, man? How's everything on your end?
Oh, everything is great. I am pumped up for hate week. I am going to the grocery store tomorrow, and bacon is at the top of my list. That's important to me. I am going to ritualistically eat bacon on Saturday morning. The morning of the game, being as it's a night game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be something I do.
Perfect.
And I know there's a guy on Twitter. I forget who his name is. I think his name is, I want to say Vince, but he does different kind of bacon every day. Like he does the whole pig, all of pig week.
That's right.
I respect. That's a little more dedication. I'm not going to eat quite that much pork. I'm just not. But yes, I will, break out some bacon when it's called for.
That's right. Gotta at least once for sure.
Absolutely. Well, once during the week because we have Floyd, and then once after if we win.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, before we get into a little bit of Big Ten news and then we hit these reviews here, I just want to remind everybody, if you want to find We Live for Saturday, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike here at Alibaba26, and you can find me, John, and Norwegian Gopher. You can also email us, We Live for Saturday, b1g@gmail.com.
All right, John. So we are starting out today with some news that I would say is pretty bad news as far as football goes. This is a beautiful but violent sport.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the nature of the sport, you end up with more injuries than you would like. And this is one of those injuries that was not even a contact injury. Yeah. But Tyler Van Dyke suffered an injury on the first drive of Wisconsin's game against Alabama this weekend. And it was subsequently reported today that he is out for the season.
Yeah. I think it was an ACL tear.
Yes.
It's pretty brutal. We we definitely are not fans of Wisconsin, but we do not take any pleasure in anyone getting hurt. We definitely feel bad for any player out there that gets that has to go through something like that. They work really hard to get to where they're at.
They work so hard to get
Yeah.
to play football.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I, you know what? You want to see the teams when they're at their best too.
Yep.
You don't want to see. I don't want to see diminished versions of any team. I want to see all the players at their best, all the teams at their best.
Yeah.
So
100%.
It's really disappointing to see TVD go down like that with a bad non-contact injury. And we certainly wish him the best. I assume it was only the third game, so I assume the NCAA will give him another year of eligibility. And, I hope he exercises that year and comes back, better than ever.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah, it'll you want him to have one more shot. The guy's got talent, that's for sure. And like you said, he deserves at least one shot after everything he's been through and how long he's worked at this and to get to where he's at. So, to the best, all the best to him. Hope he heals fast. Hope he heals well. And Wisconsin's just gotta next man up. So.
Yeah, it's Braden Locke time. There's no question about that. And we will talk about that when we get to that game. Should we get into the reviewing these week 3 games?
Yeah, let's do that.
So it was quite an exciting week in the Big Ten. It started off with a bang with the big noon Saturday game. And the result was the Alabama Crimson Tide 42, the Wisconsin Badgers 10. Jalen Milroe threw 3 touchdowns and ran for 2 more in this big lopsided victory in which Wisconsin lost their quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke, to an injury on the game's first series. So right away, that's just devastating. You lose your quarterback the first series in, you don't know what to do. He's the one who got all the reps. The game plan was all around him. That's really rough. And then on the other hand, Jalen Milroe, John, was just ruthlessly efficient. He was 12 for 17, but finished with nearly 200 yards passing, 11.5 yards per attempt, 3 TDs, 0 picks. And he was dynamic on the ground, finishing with 75 yards on 14 carries for 5.4 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns. So Jalen Milroe was the focal point of the offense, and he delivered. He was the real deal. He was every bit the dual threat, big chunk yardage monster that we thought he was.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say, not many people were giving Wisconsin a chance to win this game. I know we didn't. I was hoping to see, obviously, some more, having it be more competitive. It may have been had TVD been able to stay in the game.
That's the thing, man. It's really hard when your quarterback goes down like that to execute a game plan. That's hard.
Yeah. And
against an opponent like Alabama, that's a worst case scenario right there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's heartbreaking. Like we already talked about, but the other thing though, that I got to say, and we've been talking about, they're hinting at this, I think, throughout previous games when it comes to Wisconsin, though, even you got the next man up. I just don't see this Phil Longo, Derry Raid offense working out at Wisconsin. I'm not entirely sure that this is going to work. I don't think that they should really move forward with it when they started running the ball more and going back to the old Wisconsin we knew and grew up with. They were finding more success. Not enough, obviously, to win the game or be as effective, but you saw things happen offensively.
Yeah, Malusi and Yakimelli both ran for 6 and 5 yards per carry, respectively.
Yeah.
So it was enough, it was enough to move the ball for them, but it wasn't enough to sustain drives and score points.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you do have to have some level of passing game against a team like Alabama, but when they started to stop trying, I think like moving away from that offensive scheme and pivot back to what they know and what they do well and what I think their personnel have or who they have for their personnel. You started to at least see some success on the field, and that's what I would assume they're going to continue to do here throughout the rest of the season, especially now that you don't have your starting quarterback. And I'm not entirely sure how good of a replacement Locke is going to be. We've seen him do some good things, but is he ready to fill that role? I don't know.
If Locke was consistent enough to be the guy, I think that he would have been the guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they go in the portal to get TBD if they feel like Locke is up to the challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I want to finish giving Alabama credit. Jam Miller had 71 yards on 8 yards per carry. Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard led Alabama in receiving with 78 and 55 yards and a TD each, a TD respectively. And Josh Cuevas had a TD catch as well. So they did play really well. You got to give it to Alabama. They looked every bit like a top 5 team.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Wisconsin's side, Will Pauling had a nice day. He had 9 catches for 83 yards, which is pretty good. But behind him, once again, you just didn't get much production. And you absolutely need somebody besides Pauling to step up as a reliable option for this dairy raid to work. And that's like what you're saying is you need multiple wide receivers to be difference makers in the passing game on a consistent basis if you're going to run an air raid offense and have it work.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, does Wisconsin have receivers other than Will Pauling who can consistently make plays? We thought maybe that guy's Bryson Green, but Bryson Green hasn't been super reliable.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't know. Do they have that other guy? It seems like if they had that other guy, then he'd be producing,
Yeah, I feel like we'd have seen it by now. Obviously against lesser competition, we've seen some other guys show up and show flashes, but not consistently, not like Pauling. So it's a rough situation, man. I'm a little nervous for the rest of Wisconsin's season. It's going to be a rough road. So you got to hope that that Fickle can, some superior coaching can get them through some games and maybe pull some out where, but I would expect it to be pretty close and pretty tight for the rest of the season.
Yeah. I mean, this offense they need to figure out what Braden Locke can do, what he cannot do, and they need to build an offense around that. And that's going to mean not throwing the ball as much as they did under TBD. It just is. It's going to mean running the ball more. And that's a tough pill to swallow when you build the entire offseason and the first quarter of the season. You had all last year, all this year, you're running this air raid scheme. And now all of a sudden it's going to be like, well, no. Now we have to make the offense work around Braden. That's devastating. That's devastating. Because it's then what's your offensive identity?
Well, it's got to me, you go back to running the ball. I mean, that's what it's got to be. Go back to being it has to be. There is no other option. I mean, and there is no Braylon Allen in that backfield. There's no Taylor. There's no Monte Ball. There's no Melvin Gordon, whatever. But I feel like they could have a really good running back by committee back there. They've got talented guys that do different things really well. You've got Ches Malusi, who's kind of the more he's very quick, he's shifty, he's fast. And then you got Yakimelli, who's just that north and south kind of guy. He's really tough. He's really hard to bring down. He's a big back. So if you can work that in and make that, that's what Wisconsin knows how to do, man. They do it well. And like I said, you saw success against Alabama's defense. I know it wasn't enough, and obviously it threw the whole game plan into in disarray after TVD went down, but you saw them starting to get some momentum. And I think that if they can continue to build off that, they could still win some games in this conference.
No, I mean, they definitely, one player isn't going to stop them from having a chance to win games. Like it's not going to be that dramatic, but at the same time, you built your entire offense around this guy.
Yeah.
You brought in Phil Longo to run this type of offense with this type of guy. And now you don't have any of that, and you have to wipe the slate clean, start from scratch, and build I mean, if I'm a Badger fan, man, I'm really down right now.
Yeah,
because that's unfortunately in this day and age, unless you're Ohio State or Oregon, you're not going to have QB depth past your first quarterback. You're just not going to have 2 guys who are ready to play. Like that's almost never going to happen.
Yep,
that's the way it is now. And so if your quarterback gets hurt, you're in a world of hurt, man. And I am worried about where Wisconsin goes from here. I am. I do think you're right. I think they have to get back to running the ball. I think they can have success doing that. But I don't know, like, wins and losses, how, like, losing TVD, what the effect is. I don't know if that lowers their ceiling or if that makes, or if, like you said, maybe that just makes them realize who they have to be and embrace their identity. And maybe it turns out being a blessing and just not a blessing, but like, something with a silver lining on it.
Yeah. Well,
so I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on in Madison. I think it's these are tough times in Madison for sure, and I'm gonna really be focused on this program. They have I think they thankfully have a bye week. Yeah,
they do. Lucky for them.
Yeah. So they have a couple weeks to try to build this new offense, and it's gonna be kind of like fall camp for them the next 2 weeks. Almost putting in a new offense in a way to fit Braden Locke and figure out what they can do around him. So hopefully they can find those strengths and he can rise to the occasion, because they just don't have any other options at this point.
Yep. It'll be interesting for sure.
All right. Well, so unfortunately, Big Ten takes a loss to the SEC there, but you needed Wisconsin's backup quarterback to be out for it to happen that way. That's all. Or a starting quarterback to be out for it to happen that way. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
All right. We had the Oregon Ducks 49, the Oregon State Beavers 14.
This didn't go the way I predicted.
Not exactly, huh?
Not exactly. No.
So for those of you who missed the preview pod, John predicted an upset in this game by the Beavers.
I did. I had Oregon State winning 24-20. It definitely did not go that way at all. Oregon finally, after escaping a couple teams and not looking great, decided to show up this week.
Boy, did they ever.
Yes, they did. Yeah. Oregon ended up winning 49-14. And they just put up a ton of points, and they were able to do pretty much whatever they wanted. It was somewhat close in the first half, but then, Oregon just took off, I think, at the end of the third, into the fourth quarter. It was game over, and Oregon State couldn't do anything for the entire second half and didn't score a single point.
Yeah, it was close at half, but the second half, Oregon State ran out of juice.
Yep, absolutely. So you saw, Dylan Gabriel was 20 out of 24, 291 yards, 12.1 yard average, 2 TDs. He had a 99.3 QBR.
Those are some video game numbers, John.
Yeah. And the guy was running for a touchdown. Like, it was insane for a long touchdown too. It was incredible.
Yeah, he's more of an athlete than I thought he was.
He is.
I didn't know he had that kind of juice.
No, I had no idea he could move, that he was that fast. I mean, I knew he could.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Like, I knew he could move around in the pocket a little bit, but I did not know he was that fast running down the field. So
no.
Good for him. That's great.
We found out that he and Arch Manning have wheels. Is what we found out this weekend.
And Jordan James at the running back had a pretty decent game. 12 carries for 86 yards, 7.2 yard average, 2 TDs, 14 yards were his longest run. So they ended up passing for 306 yards and running for 240. So it was a pretty darn balanced offense there. And defensively, the one thing I gotta say here, I still think defensively, Oregon State has a little trouble stopping the run.
Yeah.
Because I was able to see Hankerson gash them up the middle quite a few times. I know that he only had 57 yards on 15 carries. And I know he only averaged 3.8, but like it seemed like they just were always struggling. And that defensive line just does not, I'm not convinced yet that they have it together on the defensive side of the ball. I think their secondary came to play. Obviously, I think they did very well shutting down the pass, but I did not see them look solid play to play on the defensive side of the ball when Oregon wanted to run. It seemed like their offensive line was able to get really good push every time, even if it wasn't for very long. It just seemed like they were always moving backwards. So I want to see that improve, obviously, for next week, but we'll talk more about that in the preview. But you had Tez Johnson, just a freak, absolute freak,
just a ridiculous human being.
Yeah, I mean, he's a tiny guy. He's not big. He's small, but he is a threat everywhere across the field. And you had Trayshawn Holden, who came down with a TD pass. I think the O-line definitely showed up. James looked a lot better, obviously, like I said, running the ball. So they got, and I guess what my whole thing comes down to, what I noticed with this team, what we've been expecting, not only just talent, but just the absolute insanity when it comes to their level of speed. It is
Oh, yeah.
all over. It is
Oh, yeah.
insane how fast everyone is on that
Yeah.
team.
The Ducks fly together for sure.
Seriously. And that's what I took away from this. Like if they had open field, they were gone. There was no one catching up to them. So, we'll see. I think that moving forward, this is a great step. Obviously, it's a rivalry game, and they ended up coming out with the win. And it's just something great to build on. Now, I think they've kind of quieted the doubters now. Now maybe they can earn that spot in the top 10. So,
yeah, they definitely makes you feel a lot more confident about the Ducks going into Big Ten play, seeing them put on a dominant performance like this, where they essentially click on all cylinders and dominate on offense, defense, special teams thoroughly.
Yeah, so I think that this is a great win. Moving forward, they'll be able to build off this. Dylan Gabriel, again, looks like the quarterback we were expecting to see in that offense, especially. And, hopefully that defensive line will continue to improve. So we shall see.
All right. So moving on past that lopsided Civil War, we had the Michigan Wolverines 28, the Arkansas State Red Wolves 18. So first off, you let out a big sigh of relief if you're a Michigan fan. This game was closer than it should have been. Arkansas State's a Sun Belt program, and Michigan struggled a lot more than they should have on both sides of the ball, really. The good news is that QB Davis Warren completed all 14 of his pass attempts on Saturday. The bad news is that 3 of those passes were completed to the other team, which led to his benching because he threw 3 picks in 14 attempts, which is a lot. So Cleo Mullins ran for a career high 153 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that helped overcome Davis Warren's 3 interceptions in the 28-18 win over Arkansas State. Wolverines could not pull away from a Sun Belt Conference team they were expected to rout, at least in part because Warren threw an interception in each of the first 3 quarters. He threw an interception a quarter for 3 quarters. That'll stop your forward momentum. Michigan coach Sharon Moore said, quote, "Put the ball in harm's way too many times and we made a change," close quote. Alex Orji replaced Warren, took advantage, throwing a 9-yard touchdown pass to Hogan Hansen to give the Wolverines a 28-3 lead early in the fourth quarter. Despite Michigan's relative struggles, they were firmly in control of this game. It just didn't look pretty, John. They controlled the football. Arkansas State coach Butch Jones said it took us 10 possessions to force a 3 and out. So it's not that Michigan wasn't moving it. It's that they just weren't executing. And also, John, by the way, I had forgotten until this moment when I was preparing for this podcast that Butch Jones still exists and that he coaches for Arkansas State now. So college football is a weird little place where nobody really goes away forever. Former Tennessee Vols coach is still in this world of college football. So good for him.
Yep.
Good for him for hanging on and playing a good game, really, against Michigan.
Absolutely.
The Red Wolves scored 2 late touchdowns and missed opportunities earlier in the game, which could have made it a lot closer than it was. So it could have been, a lot closer if their kicker had made a couple kicks. So he missed 2 field goals in the first half, including one. No, he hit the right and left upright on 2 field goals. Hit the upright. So they were that close to it being a really close game. The bad news, John, is preseason All-American tight end Colston Loveland had 3 receptions for 30 yards, but then left the game with an injury in the third quarter, and he didn't return. So Sharon Moore did not have an update on his condition, so we hope Colston Loveland is okay. He is obviously a fantastic player and is a big loss for Michigan, if he's out for any amount of time at all. So, John, we've got an old-fashioned QB controversy brewing in Ann Arbor, and it's happening the week number 11 USC is coming to town. So, not ideal timing, I'd be hoping Jack Tuttle can get healthy and do something in this competition, because neither Warren, this offense was built for Orji to be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Orji failed so badly in fall camp that they gave it to Davis Warren. And then Davis Warren failed so badly in these first 3 games that they're giving it back to Alex Orji, despite the fact that he couldn't earn it in fall camp. So that's a lot of drama, John. How do you see this thing playing out?
This is rough for the defending national champions.
Boy, is it.
I mean, it's panic button time, in my opinion, in in Ann Arbor. At first I thought that Michigan was definitely going to, have a solid shot at a college football playoff berth. And now I'm not sure that that's going to happen. I do think, what do you got to lose with Jack Tuttle? He's been around a long time. He's got a ton of experience.
Yes.
I know that there's a lot of naysayers out there, and I get it why, there's probably a reason he hasn't been considered at this point in time. But what do you have to lose, man? Like, give him a shot and then just throw Orji back in there if it doesn't work out. I don't know. Like what else is there? See if he can maybe make something happen. I know
they're going to put Orji in, and then they're going to go really run heavy.
Yep.
They're going to go like 70+% of the time running, like service academy level, running the ball.
Yep.
And maybe that works, but this offensive line hasn't shown that it's that kind of dominant run blocking offensive line either.
Yep.
So there's no guarantee that going to that run heavy approach is going to pay the dividends that they think it's gonna, or if they're just going to be banging their heads against the wall repeatedly.
Yeah. It's that on the offensive side of the ball. And then, talking about the line of scrimmage, I mean, the defensive side of the ball too, man, just does not look like it used to. And
no,
it is bizarre. Was Jim Harbaugh really such I know he was a big part of that team, clearly. But how are these players that were all Americans, just outstanding NFL prospects, look the way they do now after just 1 year? I don't get it. I don't understand how that's possible.
Remember when Jim Harbaugh left Stanford
mm-hmm.
for the NFL? And for a few years after that, they still had that Jim Harbaugh style. Yep. The offensive line was still really physical, in your face, pound you. And they still had, great running backs and good defense. And it wasn't until years later that the play really fell off under David Shaw. And so you're right, to see it go from the high standard that it had under Jim Harbaugh these last 3 years to fall off a cliff like it has this year in Ann Arbor is wild.
Yeah.
And it is when you are when you lack production to this extent at quarterback, anybody has a shot to beat you.
Mm-hmm. At this time, that's what it looks like, which I did not see coming. I never thought I would be saying that at this point.
Oh, man. This is not the preview show, but going into this year, if you had asked me, I would have told you for sure I was taking Michigan over USC. Yep. No questions asked.
Yep.
And there's no way I'm taking Michigan over USC.
No.
Not the way things have gone so far.
No. Again, here's another program that just looks like they're in trouble, and there's a lot of problems going on there, and it's going to be a harder build back than what we previously thought. And Sharon Moore's got his work cut out for him, man. I just, for me, I would give Tuttle a try, see what happens. You can always go back to Orji and see, and then, do what you can do with him anyways.
I would too, man, but I have serious questions about their QB evaluation. They saw what they had in the spring, and they chose not to go in the transfer portal and look for anything. So if this is the best they could do, why wasn't Sharon Moore trying to get someone in the transfer portal?
Good question.
This looks like a bad talent evaluation with Alex Orji, just thinking that he was the guy, but now he's going to have a chance. So maybe Alex Orji is the guy. Maybe it just took him longer, and he'll get here now, and it's going to be good. But I don't know, man. These first couple starts under Orji, I'm going to be watching Michigan razor close, because I want to see exactly what this offense really looks like under Alex Orji and whether or not it's a functional offense that can win games in the Big Ten.
Yep. Well, and can they get their running game? Yeah, and they need to get their running game going. I mean, that hasn't been as impressive as
running game going.
Yeah, this just wasn't on my bingo card, man. So
no,
I don't know what to say. I'm confused, more or less, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. I expected Michigan to just run through people, and I thought with those defensive tackles alone, they would be in every game. But it just has not worked out that way. They're not dominating on either side of the line of scrimmage like you think they would. And because of that, and not having a quarterback, they're looking really vulnerable.
Yep. Absolutely.
So it's going to be a really interesting game against USC because Alex Orji has a chance. Alex Orji could quiet the doubters too. He could come out next week. He could ball out. He could silence the haters, but this is not the preview episode, so I won't get into it.
Yep.
But I'm going to be super curious watching Michigan going forward here these next few games.
Yep.
All right. Next up, we have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish 66. The Purdue Boilermakers 7. So, John, you had picked a trio of upsets. And this was your upset pick number 2. And this one didn't quite materialize either.
Oh, man. I was feeling it last week.
I know you were.
I really was. I
wanted it for you. I was like, wow, John knows something I don't.
Yeah. Well, my man Hudson Card he had an off night. That's all.
Boy, did he ever.
Well, all right. Notre Dame Fighting Irish ended up winning this game 66-7. And my man Hudson Card,
your boy,
11 completions out of 24 attempts for 124 yards, 5.2 yard average, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions with a 10.2 QBR.
Wow. 10.2. Not even. Yeah, that's rough.
Oof, man. I really thought that they would put up a fight, and it just did not happen at all.
Marcus Freeman was coaching for his job, man.
That's really what it is. And Riley Leonard obviously had something to come out and prove after the performance last week against Northern Illinois. That whole team had something to prove. The Irish came out violent. They were out there to hurt the Purdue players. You saw it all over the field. Purdue just got beat up in a big way. So yeah, it was not great. It was not great. Reggie Love had 10 carries for 61 yards, 6.1 yard average, which is like not horrible, but not fantastic. Devin Maccabee, 9 carries for only 19 yards. And the team only totaled 38 yards rushing. So this was brutal, man. It was a total shellacking. Notre Dame, there's not much to say. Riley, I'll give Notre Dame some credit here. We had Riley Leonard, 11 for 16, 112 yards. He had a QBR rating of 93.8. And even Angeli came in with the 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, 92.4. So this team came to play, and you had Jeremiah Love with 10 carries for 109 yards, right? And then Riley Leonard also did what he does, and he moved around the field as well for 100 yards. It was just, Notre Dame didn't come to just throw the ball all over Purdue. They came to just run them over, and they did. So, like I said, Purdue just got beat up. They had nothing going at any point in time. Did they have a chance in this game? And I mean, Notre Dame alone scored 28 points in the second quarter.
Yikes! Yeah, that's a beating.
That is a beating. So there's not much else to say.
No.
Sorry, Boilermaker fans. I didn't mean to give you any hope, but I really thought Hudson Card was gonna look a lot better, and that the offensive line was gonna help him out more, but that just did not happen. But yeah, so
next
we'll see.
time, next game.
Next game. Yeah,
I think Purdue still has a out of conference game left, don't they?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
So they have another game where they can get it right before Big Ten play happens.
For sure.
All right, next up, we had the Nebraska Cornhuskers 34, the Northern Iowa Panthers 3. Nebraska offensively did whatever it wanted in this game as they obliterated an overmatched Northern Iowa squad. Running backs Dante Dowdell and Emmett Johnson were effective in limited work, and Dylan Raiola had his most efficient game yet, going 17 for 23 for 247 yards, 10.7 yards per attempt, 2 TDs, and 1 pick for a QBR of 91.9. So that is a stellar outing, even despite the pick. So you got to give it up for Raiola here. He's looking like the real deal right now. The defense was pretty good as Isaac Gifford showed out with 10 tackles and 1.5 tackles for loss. John Bullock had 9 tackles, while Marcus Buford had 4 tackles and a pass defended. I will say that Northern Iowa moved the ball at times. They just could not finish. They had 300 yards, a little over 300 yards of offense, but they could not finish. And Nebraska did a really good job of, stopping them in the red zone and getting stops when they needed to in the middle of the field too. So you got to give credit to them for that. Nebraska ran over an inferior opponent once again. I feel like that's been the track record of the season so far, John.
Yep.
And that's been a good recipe for Nebraska. But next up is conference play in Illinois. So things will get significantly harder there. And I, for one, am really excited to see these Cornhuskers tested against a team that matches up a little better against them physically, because they just haven't. Nebraska has been superior physically to the team. And I'm including Colorado in that. Colorado did not have the horses up front to hang with a Big Ten team like Nebraska. So now they'll have Illinois, who actually has some horses up front and can maybe be a little more competitive. And I think it's going to be a really, that's going to be a really interesting game. And it's a Friday night game, so everyone's going to be watching.
Yeah, you're finally going to be playing a team with a pulse that is competitive and with a really good coach.
Yeah,
they have not faced, in my opinion, a really good coach up until this point. So they've taken care of business and did exactly what they're supposed to do.
They've been great.
Full credit there. I did think that what we saw exposed a little bit with Nebraska's defense is that they can be ran on from time to time.
Yes.
And so Northern Iowa was able to do that and expose them. And so, if you don't think
at times, not for the whole game, but at times they ran the ball effectively.
Yeah. And be sure that Bielema is going to take advantage of that for sure. I know that this isn't a preview episode, but expect that for sure coming up. But I'm sure Rule will is fully aware of that as well. So
it's not a preview episode, John, but we're just fans and we get excited. So that's the game. I mean, I am going to have some popcorn for myself. I'm going to have the whole meme with the pop and popcorn watching that game on Friday, just like fascinated, because that's going to be a good one. So Nebraska, good for you.
Yeah.
A really successful out of conference season for the Cornhuskers. You got to give it up for them.
So
they managed to get them. They got themselves ranked.
Yep.
I mean, this has been, it's been a good series of games. So now it'll be really interesting to see Nebraska against that step up in competition.
Yeah, the first time they've been 3-0 since 2016. So
oh wow, yeah. Which is the last time they went to a bowl game too.
Yep, exactly. So glad they did it. Look at you did exactly what you're supposed to, and now just got to build off that. But it's going to be a challenge here next week, and we'll go into that in the next episode.
All right, next up we have the Illinois Illini 30, the Central Michigan Chippewas 9. Texas A&M transfer kicker hit a school record 59-yard field goal as time expired in the first half to give the Illini a 13-6 lead. So this wasn't just a beating. It was only a touchdown game at half. The first half was very closely contested as Illinois started slowly and didn't play well out of the gate. That said, they played much better after halftime and came out with a convincing win. Luke Altmaier threw for 242 yards, a couple touchdowns, both to Pat Bryant. And it was good to see him step up and make some plays. Bryant had 7 catches for 102 yards and those 2 touchdowns. And then Zachary Franklin had 5 catches for 66 yards. So those guys are a legit 1-2 punch at wide receiver, and it's good to see them, take over a game the way they kind of took it over. Mm-hmm. Josh McRae ran for 54 yards on 8 carries, and Khalil Valentine had 53 yards on 5 rushes for the Illini, who have won 3 state games to start the season for the first time since 2011. Mm-hmm. So that's impressive stuff. Bielema expected a tougher game. He got a tougher game, at least in the first half. Altmaier and Bryant hooked up on a 20-yard TD pass to begin the second half, so I thought that was a big turning point in the game. Bryant wriggled free from 4 would-be Central Michigan tacklers on his way to the end zone, so it was kind of a flexing moment for him, for sure. And he was wide open in the end zone in the first quarter when Altmaier hit him for a touchdown as well. So Bryant said, quote, "Luke and I did a lot of work over the summer, so when we get to the field for a game, things come easily for us," close quote. Defense was also very good, John. They held Central Michigan QB Joe Labas to 12 of 12 to 25 for 125 yards, just 5 yards per attempt, 0 TDs and a pick. So it was a rough night for him thanks to this Illini ID. And Central Michigan actually had slightly better luck running the ball, actually, than they did throwing it, but they couldn't generate enough yards to sustain drives either way. So next up for Illinois is Nebraska. We just talked about that, and that's going to be one of the most anticipated games of the week. Do you have any thoughts on the Illini, John?
I think that I know Bielema mentioned that he kind of expected this to be a little bit of a letdown game, and it was a little closer than he would have liked it at times. Yep. After a big win last week against Kansas, it's kind of expected, but the players got their stuff together and they were able to take care of business against an opponent that they should have. And so they were able to do what they needed to do. And I'm sure they're looking forward to next week's game as well. And, I'm looking forward to it, man. I don't know what else to say. This is just one of those games where you expected it to go this way, and it did.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Moving on to the next game, we had the Michigan State Spartans 40, the FCS level Prairie View A&M Panthers 0. So Sparty played a bad FCS team and did to them what a Big Ten school should do to a bad FCS team. Aiden Childs threw for 173 yards on 9.1 yards per attempt, a pick and 0 interceptions, while the team ran for 188 yards on nearly 6 yards per carry, and higher than that from the running back position. The defense also played well. Obviously, they pitched a shutout. And Jack Velling caught a couple passes. Isaiah Johnson had a couple catches with the TD. This was a terrible opponent. There's not too much to glean from this performance. I'm really excited to see what Sparty does when it gets back into conference play. And, I think they showed with the win over Maryland that they're a team that's going to be a tough out this year. Mm-hmm. So, and probably be better than I thought they were going to be. So good for Michigan State for where they're at this point.
Yeah, honestly, I think they're impressing me too. Goes to show you, though, Jonathan Smith is who we expected him to be.
He's a great coach.
Yeah, I expected them to have more trouble, more issues than what we've seen thus far. But this, given this was an absolutely terrible FCS team, so I guess I'm a little disappointed. I had them 55-0, so they only got to 40. But whatever. But no, it was absolutely they annihilated this team as they should have. But I'm definitely looking forward to see how they do moving forward once they get into Big Ten conference play.
Yeah, going to be really exciting to watch Michigan State going forward, but good for them for getting to where they're at right now.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, next up, we have the Minnesota Golden Gophers 27, the Nevada Wolfpack 0. This game was a slow burn, John. Mm-hmm. Minnesota's first 2 drives had promise, but fizzled out in field goal range, which made it 6-0 Gophers after 1 quarter. However, Minnesota dominated the second quarter on both sides of the ball to race out to a 20-0 halftime lead. At that point, you could feel that Nevada's offense just didn't match up well with Minnesota's D, and the Wolfpack appeared kind of undersized and overmatched by the Gophers. Nevada had a really aggressive game plan, which I thought was interesting. Like in last week's game against Rhode Island, the Wolfpack consistently triggered 9 guys in the box, sometimes 8, but mostly 9, just sending their safeties hardcore, creeping them up, having them running in the box. after the play to just challenge Minnesota and take away that run game. And the Gophers had some struggles finishing those drives in the first quarter and first part of the second quarter before they scored a couple TDs before half. Defense was tremendous. I mean, Nevada's QB, Brendan Lewis, was sacked 4 times and harassed all day back there. Lewis also threw 3 picks, in part because this Gopher D was making his life miserable all game long. Mm-hmm. I mean, Minnesota cornerback Ethan Robinson, 8 tackles, 2 passes defended, and a pick, and a really impressive pick. I mean, he came flying through the air, ball hawked it at its highest point, got hammered by one of his own teammates, went down in a heap and held onto the ball. So that was really impressive. And then Kerry Brown, man, the freshman safety, had two interceptions, one a diving effort and another one where he just read, oh man, he was just on Brendan Lewis. He knew what he was doing. It was like he was in the offensive huddle. He knew what the play was. It was like, I was like, is Connor Stallion stealing signs? Because Kerry Brown knows what's up.
Yep, absolutely.
So that was a lot of fun. And honestly, other than the fact that starting cornerback Justin Wally got banged up and had to leave the game early, you know, this was a really successful outing for the Gophers. John, what did you think about this game?
Yeah, it definitely started out slow. I want to see that change. You know, it wasn't, you know, thankfully it was just one quarter, you know, that it really looked that way. And then they were able to kind of get their stuff together and start moving the ball. And
they still scored, but they just scored field goals.
Yeah. But I was nervous, you know, because I didn't see the running game look like it was going to get any better. But it did. It definitely did. So it's a relief, man. We saw the passing game get better last week, and now we've seen the passing game consistently stay where it was at, and to see the running game kind of come to get going as well. So I think this offense is really doing a lot of things. You're seeing, obviously I would like to see Daniel Jackson get more targets, but what I love is that Brosmer is not afraid to spread it around. And we're also seeing different receivers come up, and we're seeing Jamison Gears. We're seeing Spencer, Elijah Spencer. We're, you know, Christian Driver,
Lemecki Brockington.
Like, so this is what we've been waiting for, is to see who else is going to come and rise up. We still may not know exactly who our, you know, technically wide receiver 2 is right now, but the fact that multiple receivers can come down with it, who cares?
Yeah. I don't think anyone cares. I think it is Elijah Spencer. I think he's number 2 at this point. But Lemecki is up there too. Christian Driver gets looks too. Now he had a bad play where he gave up an interception. He didn't see the ball coming to him, and
he also got kind of pushed off though, dude. There was a little bit. It could have been called that.
Yes,
it wasn't bad,
but easy to push him off because he wasn't looking for the ball.
He gave up. Yeah,
and you saw he went to the sideline, and PJ was like, "Hey man, you got to look for the damn ball."
Yeah,
you know, all the time.
Well, I was impressed. I was really impressed with the offense, the defense. I mean, dude, Corey Heatherman.
Wow.
To all of the freaking people out there that loved to tell me all offseason about how losing Joe Rossi is just the end of our defense and we're going to fall apart and we're going to be terrible and never good again, because that was it. That was the key to Minnesota being good all these years. Guess what? I think, frankly, we could be even better under Corey Heatherman, because he is aggressive, he is violent, and I freaking love it. So I am very, very happy with our defense. Now, obviously, we're going to have more of a test next week, but dude, if this keeps going the way it's going, I mean, this could be a dangerous, dangerous team moving forward.
Heatherman will do things that Rossi would never do. Like, he'll blitz defensive backs on running downs.
Yep.
And just be like, I know you're going to run the ball. I know there's a 95% chance you're going to run the ball. I'm going to blitz a defensive back. And, if you're passing, maybe I'll get there and get a sack anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And he's willing to attack like that in a way that Joe Rossi did not want to. Joe Rossi was much more wanted to play bend but don't break and let you make mistakes, right?
Yep.
Which is also a very effective way to go. Don't get me wrong. But Heatherman, it is the same defense, but it's got a more of attacking style.
Yep.
In the play calling. So we're seeing that evolution in the scheme. And it's really, really exciting because, I mean, this team has given up 17 points in 3 games. They've given up 1 touchdown in 3 games.
Yep.
And you can say, they haven't played anyone good. Well, okay, neither has anybody else. They haven't given up 17 points in 3 games.
Yep.
You know? And they have played a power conference team that's 3-0. So it's not like they haven't played anybody at all. Yeah, I think it's really exciting. Max Brosmer had another solid day. He was 16 of 26, 191 for 1 TD and a pick. Once again, his receivers had a few drops they absolutely should have caught, which would have made this game even more lopsided than it was. And Daniel Jackson and Elijah Spencer, like you said, each had 4 catches and combined for 115 yards. So Brosmer just missed Jackson on what would have been like a 60-yard touchdown pass in the third quarter. So you'd like to see Minnesota capitalize on some of those bombs, but it's also just exciting that they're taking those chances and putting defenses on their heels by attacking consistently, which is not something we've always seen or mostly seen during the PJ Fleck era.
Not really at all. Not since maybe 2019, and that was like, and even still, like there were games where he got too conservative and didn't trust his quarterback. Where
even then in 2019, every time we audibled, it was to a running play.
Yep.
Like we audible almost exclusively to passing plays now. We rarely audible to running plays. And that's a very different kind of approach and a very kind of different way to attack defenses. And Fleck talked about it in the post game. He said, we're going to win games a little differently this year. And people have to be ready for that. So he's signaling what he's doing, man. And it is a different way to attack them. And all I can say is with these next 3 games, Iowa, Michigan, USC coming up, this is time for PJ to unleash this passing attack on the Big Ten and see what he can get done. And this is it, man. I mean, this is the key stretch of the season. Can the Gophers get a win or two in this tough, can they beat Iowa and then have a chance to maybe steal one against either Michigan or USC? That's going to be the whole season. Or if they lose to Iowa, then the Gophers are probably losing to Michigan, probably losing to USC, probably missing a bowl game.
Yep.
So not a preview episode, but I just got to say, we talked about Minnesota. We're going to talk about Iowa. This Minnesota-Iowa game is going to be one to watch.
Yeah. This is going to be huge. The other thing I just want to touch on too is how much we are incorporating our running backs into the passing game. Darius Taylor came down with multiple catches. One for a touch. It was his first TD pass as well in this game. Catch. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, of course. So yeah, I'm really excited about seeing that happen. I did think that we kept our starters in a little too long. That made me nervous, but
I understood why they did it too, because it was only a 4 touchdown game. They weren't up 40 points. You know what I mean? It's a little different thing in that. And I will say, I'm glad you brought up Darius Taylor, because not only did he catch a touchdown pass, but he also had 124 yards rushing, including an absurd 80-yard touchdown run. And so he ran for 2 TDs, caught another, had over 150 yards from scrimmage, and just a monster day for the star Minnesota tailback.
Yep.
I mean, he's a special player, and seeing him contribute in the running and the passing game has got to, as a Gopher fan, you got to be happy. And if you're an opposing defensive coordinator, that's something that you're going to be watching really closely and trying to figure out what you can do about it.
Yep. Yeah. It's exciting stuff, man. A lot.
2 straight shutouts. Oh, there's so much on the line in this Iowa game. I mean, for both teams, it's the whole season, because Iowa still thinks of itself as having outside college football playoff aspirations.
Yep.
If they lose to Minnesota, that's over.
Yep.
So, yeah, we've got, again, this is just the review, not the preview, but we've got some exciting games to preview next week.
Absolutely.
So, yes. So the Minnesota Golden Gophers get the win over the Nevada Wolf Pack. All right. Next up, we had the Washington State Cougars 24, the Washington Huskies 19. This is a upset that John and I both picked. So this was my sole upset special, and I hit on it. So I'm feeling really good about it, John. Yeah.
Yeah, this game was fun to watch, man. This was really exciting.
Great game.
It's a bit of a heartbreaker because Washington had a chance at the end. They really did. And just made a terrible play call, and the Cougars were ready for it. And that speed option just was not going anywhere. And you saw it from the second the ball was snapped.
They ran Washington had a chance to score. They had one play to score, right? It was 4th down.
Yep. And goal.
And goal. And they ran a speed option to the short side of the field. So you have the sideline, which the thing about the sideline, John, is it never misses a tackle.
Yeah.
The sideline is undefeated in making tackles.
Yep.
So you have a play where you're running full speed towards the sideline and can pitch it to another guy who's also running full speed toward the sideline. And that is just a really bad call. It's a really bad call, and it's not a serious call. I don't know what they were doing. They did not give themselves a chance to win on that play, and that's inexcusable. That goes to the head coach, man. That's on Jed Fish. You can't allow that call there. You can't.
And I can't remember exactly.
You got to veto that. You got to be like, hey, man, no, we're gonna throw the ball.
Yeah, and I don't remember exactly what he said in the post-game press conference, but it was a really terrible excuse. It was whatever he said was really bad, and I was like, ooh, that does not reflect well already.
Yeah.
For this program. So, it was a rough day. I'll say Will Rogers had a good day.
Yes.
He was able to produce. 23 out of 31 attempts. 314 yards, 10.1 average, 1 TD. He looked good. I like the way he looks in the pocket. He had a great connection with Giles Jackson, who had 8 receptions for 162 yards. I mean, the guy is a threat all over the field.
Yes.
So you have some weapons there, and you also had Jonah Coleman, who was able to put up some decent numbers with 75 yards rushing. And he was able to catch a few balls as well, and it looked good. So it's not for lack of talent on the offensive side of the ball that Washington struggles. It's the defense, man. That's where I saw a lot of problems, and it did not help that John Notre. No, he did not have a great day throwing the ball. He was only 17 out of 34, but when he connected, and it was 245 yards, and he had a 70 with 1 TD. He did throw an interception because the guy, he's a gunslinger. That's what he is. He will throw the ball wherever, but where he is a true threat is his freaking legs. This guy is a freak athlete and so much fun to watch. So fast with his feet, just all over the place, quick, shifty. I mean, this kid can do a million things. So in Washington just didn't have an answer, man. They could not answer with him on the field. It was too much for them. And the other problem too is that defense just was very undisciplined. They kept shooting themselves in the foot with penalties. There was poor tackling. It was a rough day for the defense, man. I felt bad. Because you saw the offense try to keep them in this game, and the defense just was not helping them at all.
Yeah, that Steve Belichick defense not looking so great so far against it. And Mateer, man, he's a dynamic player. He's a hard guy to play against.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of moxie.
That's for sure. He was fun to watch, and I felt bad, man. I felt bad for that defense because you could just see them on the field looking just like lost and confused and not knowing what to do or what to look out for. So, good for the Cougars. They definitely showed up to play. They had a chip on their shoulder because they were aggressive the entire time, that offense and that defense. And unfortunately, Will Rogers and company just couldn't get it done.
No, it was a rough day for Washington. And hopefully, they can bounce back and find something on defense and play a little better on that side of the ball, give themselves a little better chance to win.
Yep.
All right, next up, we have the Iowa Hawkeyes 38, the Troy Trojans 21.
Well, this was another interesting game, and we've seen this now on a couple occasions, a game like this, where the score, to me, does not reflect the actual game.
This was a close game.
It was a close game. It was a close game until pretty much towards the end of the third quarter. Is when things started to turn around, and Troy just kind of ran out of gas, and Iowa was able to pull away. But again, it was of no help to the passing game. Cade McNamara had 176 yards with 19 completions out of 23 attempts and only a 46.9 QBR. It was a mess again. Brendan Sullivan had the only passing TD for 2 yards. It was more or less a shovel pass
Sure.
to Estrenga, I believe.
Yep.
And actually, Troy's quarterback, Matthew Caldwell, had a slightly higher QBR of 47.7. So neither quarterback looked fantastic. It was, again, a lot of questions regarding that passing game. It gives you pause. You didn't see a lot of receivers come out and look fantastic either. It was bad choices by McNamara. Just errant balls. I don't know. It looks messy, and so we're seeing a lot of that. And thankfully, though, for Iowa, they have a guy called Caleb Johnson, who we talked about before. And this guy is electric, and he's really good. 25 carries for 173 yards, 6.9 yard average,
Wow.
2 TDs, with a 39-yard run. And he looked great as he has this entire season. Even against Iowa State, this guy was able to put up great numbers. And that was a hard fought game against a pretty solid opponent. But my questions are here again. You are seeing Iowa, sure, the score by the end of the game, they score multiple points and it looks great by the end of the game. But it takes them until the end to pull away. And at one point in time, Troy was leading.
The thing that stuck out to me is that Iowa's secondary got torched several times when the game was close.
Mm-hmm.
They got torched for deep touchdowns to 2 or 3 times, I think.
Yep.
And just right over the top, just ran by the DBs like they were standing still. And that is not something you want to see if you're an Iowa Hawkeye fan. That is not something you're used to seeing, the DBs struggling like that.
Yep.
And I just wonder if this Iowa defense, if they are as good at defensive back as they usually are.
Yeah.
Or if they're missing Cooper DeJean a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they are. Absolutely. And I'm not seeing Sebastian Castro show up as often as I want to either, that I was expecting. So look, the defense is excellent at stopping the run. They are excellent at stopping the run. I give them full credit there, but their secondary is not what we are used to seeing. And that's scary. And then on top of that, when was the last time you saw any team, let alone a G5 team, the level of Troy, return a punt for a touchdown, a 77-yard punt for a touchdown against an Iowa special teams?
Yeah. Iowa, the team that prides itself on defense and special teams. That's really rough.
This was a win. They did what they were supposed to do, but it was messy and it does not look good. And again, I don't know. I mean, and I'm sure Iowa fans, you can tell me how wrong I am about all of this. And there's a lot of things that, did go well. I'm sure, obviously the running game went exceptionally well, but your pass protection was not fantastic. Your quarterback is not fantastic. Your receivers are not fantastic. When you have trouble getting the ball to Luke Lachey, there's a problem. This guy go ahead.
Oh, and the thing is, Cade, it's like you can complete most of your passes. Cade is, but the ball's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's not. They're not moving the ball with it most of the time.
Yeah. It's just, again, this is a little confusing. In some ways, I was expecting things to be a little bit better at this point and not to struggle against teams of this caliber until late in the game. I just, it's one thing to start out, the first quarter, maybe even the first half, but if you don't come out clicking on all cylinders by the, at the beginning of the second half, then there's something else going on here. So, but credit where credit is due. They ended up taking care of business. Caleb Johnson had a phenomenal day. I think he's the nation's leading rusher at this time.
Yeah.
So, we'll see, next week again, not a preview episode, but he's going to be facing a much better defensive line than they have seen so far.
Yeah, it's true. It's going to be the Iowa Minnesota game, man. It's going to be a great one.
Yep.
Like I can't even wait. Not just because I'm attending it, but also it is just going to be a great game. Period.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next up, we have the Indiana Hoosiers 42, the UCLA Bruins 13. John, this game can be summed up by the first two possessions. Indiana got the ball, drove right down and scored. And then when UCLA got the ball back, they had an unforced fumble on their first offensive snap, which was promptly recovered by Indiana. And then Indiana scored on a nice third down middle screen pass after a timeout, and the route was on. When the smoke cleared, Curtis Rourke finished 25 of 33 for 307 yards for a healthy 9.3 yards per attempt, 4 TDs, 0 picks, QBR of 95.5. He was unstoppable. Mm-hmm. It helps that Miles Cross, Omar Cooper, and Elijah Surratt all made plays downfield for the Hoosiers as Rourke spread the ball around, but Rourke was great. And Indiana didn't run for a lot of yards, but they ran enough to keep the Bruins honest and open up this vaunted passing attack. And I think that'll be the recipe for Indiana, kind of much like Minnesota this year, actually. Mm-hmm. I think they're both shaping up to be teams who throw the ball to open up the running game. Yeah. And in this day and age, I honestly think it's easier to throw to run than it is to run to throw. Mm-hmm. I think it is. Defenses can't load up against you the same way they can if you're just trying to bang your head against the ball and run it all the time. Because defenses are so sophisticated now in what they can do to limit the run game. And you need to be able to run and pass so defenses can't just blatantly cheat to stop one or the other. Yeah. Hoosier defense was also great. Aiden Fisher had 9 tackles in the pass defended. DB Amari Farrell had 6 tackles, including a sack, as the Hoosier D showed UCLA different looks and had them flummoxed. Okay, John, now the bad of this game. Quite simply, UCLA did not look like a competent Big Ten football team, full stop. They did not look like they even belonged on the same field as the Hoosiers. It was an ugly loss punctuated by early mistakes in the form of penalties and turnovers. And Indiana had way more penalties than UCLA. So that should have been an advantage for the Bruins, but they couldn't capitalize off of IU's mistakes. UCLA only managed 238 yards of offense to IU's 430. So they didn't quite get doubled up, but they were close enough. How do you fumble that first snap of the game? How does that even happen? That shows me you fundamentally are not ready to play. Mm-hmm. And at no point did this UCLA offense look competent out there, going just 2 for 8 on third down, despite averaging almost 6 yards per play. There's a disconnect there. Yeah. They're in position to make plays. They're not making plays. So UCLA should have had more success than they did, but they just got run over. And I mean, this game flat out was not competitive. And if you're UCLA, you had Indiana circled as a must win if you want to get to a bowl game. Forget getting to a bowl game. UCLA isn't going to win any conference games unless they significantly improve. And they can. I'm not saying they won't. I'm not saying they won't win some Big Ten games, but they have to get a lot better if they're going to even think about winning any Big Ten games. And the bad news about that is their upcoming schedule is absolutely brutal. So, yeah, man, UCLA great for Indiana. I'm really happy for Indiana, but UCLA looks like they're going to be on the wrong side of a lot of blowouts this year.
Yeah, a lot of people in the national media or whatever were picking UCLA to be more competitive than clearly what they are. And we did not. No. This is turning out to be exactly what we expected.
It's exactly what we predicted from UCLA.
In some ways, right now, anyways, even worse. At least the way this game went. I'm not saying it'll stay that way. I agree. This could get better. It's not that they lack talent on that, especially on the offense. I think there's definitely some talent there, but things got to change. They got to get better fast. I think where this comes down to again, though, like we talked about, is the line of scrimmage. And I do not think they have the personnel. They just don't to be able to sustain full 4 quarters against any Big Ten team at this time. If there was going to be a team that I thought they would have had a chance, it would have been the Hoosiers. On the rest of that schedule, I'm sorry. It is not. It's going to get harder.
Yeah, I'm not saying they can't rally and win a game because anyone can rally and win a game in the Big Ten.
Sure.
But they're going to have to get a lot better.
Yeah,
they got to get a lot better. Deshaun Foster has to earn his money, and he has to prove that he can lead this team to get better than they are now as the season goes on.
Yeah. This was ugly, but good for you. Good for the Hoosiers. Curtis Rourke looked absolutely incredible.
Looks like one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten.
100%. Yep.
And also, hey, pollsters, rank the Hoosiers, you cowards. They're 3-0. They're blasted everybody. rank them.
Yep.
Rank them until they lose.
That's right. I agree.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have the Northwestern Wildcats 31, the Eastern Illinois Panthers 7.
This was a Jack Lausch coming out party. This was I mean, David Braun definitely made the right decision here. Jack Lausch was 23 completions out of 31 attempts, 227 yards, 7.3 average, 2 TDs, but still only a 35.9 QBR. Now, what I was able to see here that it was a little confusing how that turned out, but I think he looked more competent, and the fact that this guy too, he has got wheels. He can move. I did not expect that. Another quarterback that has speed that I did not expect, just like Dylan Gabriel, and he was able to see the field and he can shimmy and shake with the best of them. So I was really happy to see that because they need that, man. They need that extra rusher that can get them some yardage on the ground because Cam Porter, he was able to get 77 yards on 15 carries, which is good, especially against a team like Eastern Illinois. But he's too inconsistent. So if you want to have that dynamic, to be able to throw and run the ball, you're going to have your quarterback be a dual threat. And I think they found that here. That offensive line looked great. The defense was stout as it has been all season so far. So this was an impressive win. I think it was good to get Jack Lausch out there. This was the smart move, getting him out there against an inferior opponent, getting him comfortable. And I think they did. I think they executed exactly what David Braun wanted to do. And moving into conference play, this is great. I mean, I think this gives them more hope than what I previously thought, having Mike Wright at the helm.
Yes, I think it's night and day. If you're a Cats fan, you are feeling 100% better this week than you felt last week. Like this is giving you hope. You got a shot in the arm. Jack Lausch looks like, if nothing else, he can make some plays, which is more than we could say for Mike Wright. So yeah, it's an exciting time, and it'll be interesting to see how to track this and how it goes in conference play.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, last up, we made it to the last game, John. We have the Maryland Terrapins 27, the Virginia Cavaliers 13. And you texted me early. No, go on.
Oh, no. You start. You go ahead.
I said you texted me earlier in this game, and we both thought Virginia had the upper hand.
I honestly, Virginia had a collapse, man. Like they totally collapsed. They kept shooting themselves in the foot. Calandria was like just making mistakes I hadn't seen him make previously. It was like they just looked lost out there half the time. But so did Maryland in the first half.
Yes.
Maryland did not look good either in the first half. They were down at that going into the half 10-7. And they looked lost. Their running game was not effective. Their passing game was not great. Billy Edwards was getting sacked. He didn't look good. His QBR rating was not fantastic here either. But fortunately for Maryland, they got better in the second half, and Virginia just did not. It was an ugly day for the Cavaliers. Maryland was able to come back. Again, we're seeing Loxley do what he previously hasn't, up until last year. He's, coming back in the second half from being down and putting up a 10 or 20 points to be able to come out with the win, a convincing win. And, I was impressed by that, and thankfully what Maryland has over the Cavaliers, even though I do think Calandria is a good quarterback, is they got those wide receivers, man. Prather is amazing, and Felton again with just really explosive plays like everywhere, and that's what Maryland does. That's what Loxley wants to do, and they were able to get that done. And at first, the way I was able to see it is they didn't run the ball that well. This new guy, Nolan Ray, seems to be actually their bell cow. I'm not seeing Hemby running that well this season, nor McDonald. So
Hemby's been supplanted.
Yeah. So this Nolan Ray is good. I think he can move around. He didn't have a great day today or against Virginia here, but I think he's better, and they're able to keep people honest with that. But it's that those explosive plays downfield and the talent at wide receiver, and Prather and Felton are just an amazing dynamic duo. So they're lucky they got that going. And their pass protection still, though, is not great. But fortunately, Edwards has a really quick release and he's able to make those quick reads down the field. So, it took a while. It took a while. It took until the fourth quarter for Maryland to really pull away. But it was just the fact that Maryland had more talent on the field. Defensively with Maryland, I still think they have some trouble stopping the run. At least they did in the first half of the game. I do. But the other thing I will say is their coverage downfield has definitely improved a lot, and their pressure on the quarterbacks. I think their edge rushers are getting better and better and better. So yeah, man. Impressive win at the end of the day. They were able to pull it together, and
Maryland needed this win.
Yep, for sure.
They needed this win to get the season back on track. So good for Mike Loxley rallying the troops. He's got Billy Edwards playing pretty well. He's got great receivers. Like, they have a Maryland identity. They're going to go out and score some points. This is a functional looking Maryland team going into Big Ten play.
100%. Yeah.
All right, John, anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
Yeah. Next week is going to be insane. That's all. I mean,
week 4 is going to be wild.
It's going to be nuts, dude. So
yes,
I'm excited. Look for us, obviously, coming up here with the preview pod in the next couple days.
Yep.
We'll fill you on in. And of course, where you want to find us, We Live for Saturday. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike at Alibaba26, and you can find me, John, at Norwegian Gopher. You can also email us, We Live for Saturday, b1g@gmail.com. Please let us know what you think. If you disagree, if you like us, just leave us a 5-star review, please, and then you can destroy us in the comments if you want.
And if you're on YouTube, even if you listen on an audio platform, please go to YouTube and go subscribe to our channel. That helps a lot for us to get the word out and get in front of other people's eyes. So please come subscribe to us on YouTube. We really appreciate it.
Yes, please.
All right. Thanks for rocking with us. And we will see you for the preview pod for a crazy upcoming week 4 that I cannot wait for.